Hello and welcome to a very special edition of Harmonious World. Because this episode features Michael Shapiro, who has become a very dear friend of the podcast and of me and my family, actually. I first interviewed Michael in October 2020, then again in April 2021. I then saw him in Milan in November 2021. He has introduced me to a number of important people, including Malcolm Singer, with whom I did my first ever live interview, Jeff Atmagian, who I did another one with, Danae Zanthe-Vlase, who I've interviewed twice, and then especially flautist Stathis Karapanos, who you can hear right now playing Michael's In the Light of the Sun flute concerto. This is movement 1, which is just beautiful, and which I actually heard recorded live on the 24th of April this year. So this is an absolute joy to speak to Michael again, and I hope you enjoy listening to our conversation. Hey, there you are.
Here I am.
Oh, it's so good to see you.
Oh, beyond good to see you. Welcome to Chappaqua.
Thank you once more for joining me for Harmonious World. And I have to say, on the podcast, I want to thank you officially for inviting me, first of all, to hear Danae's recording of Mythologies 2, which was stunning. But then particularly to the recording with Stathis of your flute concerto. It was amazing. Both of those things were such an amazing experience. So thank you.
Well, we're not done yet.
I know. Well, we've got another date in November, haven't we?
We sure do. And she is, as you know, one of the greatest singers in the world.
Absolutely.
And what a wonderful human being. So it's going to be really something.
So tell my audience who it is and what she's doing.
Yes, well, the great news is I am going to be recording my Dublin songs based on James Joyce poetry. 6 of the 12 have been orchestrated for soprano and orchestra. And Let Me Live from The Slave, my new opera, which is a full evening, based on a libretto of Hannah McDermott. And the singer is the great Mia Persson, who is a Swedish, British soprano, extremely well known throughout the world. And the great news is we're doing it again with the Royal Philharmonic. Major thanks to Ian MacLeay and Eleanor Clements, who are just the most magnificent people. And we'll be recording it again at the Angel Studio, now known as Abbey Road Institute, on Upper Street in London, my new home. It's just, it's a dream, because my Dublin songs I wrote in my 20s, orchestrated maybe in my 30s or 40s, and but they're major leader, and they've been done all over the world with piano and recorded by Ariadne Greif in a very wonderful recording in the piano version. But the orchestration was only performed once by the Chappaqua Orchestra before I conducted it years ago. And I've always wanted to record them with a special kind of singer that Mia Persson that has this incredible Mozartian, Strauss voice, very pure, and she really knows how to dig into the poetry. And the poetry of James Joyce is extraordinary.
It is indeed, yeah.
It's from Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man is one of the songs. Ding Dong, the Castle Bell. and "Oh, Cool is the Valley Now," and all these great poems from his chamber music. And the Society of Authors gave me permission years ago to set them, and they've been done all over the world, and in their high voice and piano version, and also a tenor did them in Germany years ago. But I've never had a recording of the orchestral version. And now that I have this wonderful relationship with the Royal Philharmonic, I felt that I must record them. In addition, "Let Me Live" is the aria that Mia is going to sing from The Slave, my new opera, which is my magnum opus, as it were. 2.5 hour opera. This is from the sixth scene of the second act, in,
Right.
in which our heroine, Sarah, who was born Wanda, Polish Roman Catholic woman, now hiding out in a Jewish village, playing a mute because she doesn't want to expose herself. 1652 Poland, you can imagine. And she's pregnant and she's about to give birth. And she sings to God, "Let me live," because she's fearing the alternative.
Right.
And it's very, very profound, very simply stated, kind of a hymn. And she's going to do the most magnificent job. So we start rehearsing when she comes to New York. She's singing the Vier letzte Lied of Strauss with the New York Philharmonic at the beginning of November. When she's here, we'll be rehearsing. And then we'll rehearse again in London when I get there. And then we record on the 18th. And you'll be there in the booth.
I will. I will. It's such an honor. It's such a great place to be. And for the flute concerto, you gave me the score. You lent me the score to, and that was lovely to be able to see to visualize what I could hear. It was just amazing. And as soon as I was able to hear the finished version of that, it just blew me away. And just to play that, to have that, it's such a connection. And of course, I interviewed Stathis just a few weeks ago, so he's been on the podcast now, and so I'm feeling all of these connections around the world and across this music, which is stunning.
Thank you. The flute concerto, I consider, it's called "In the Light of the Sun" because it's a very bright piece, as it were. It's full of melody, and the instruments just go in and out of each other with Stathis just soaring.
Yeah,
But I considered the work. It's interesting how its derivation. I had composed the first act of The Slave, but Hannah had not yet gotten me the libretto for the second act. And Stathis had asked me to write a concerto for him. So I then wrote a concerto in less than 3 months, soup to nuts. It just flew right out of me. And I consider that piece my Mozart Schubert piece in a way, because it's very pure. It
yeah.
states what it needs to state. And he just does such wonderful things with it. Hillary, you like this fact too. I'm very particular, as you know. We know we've been friends a long time.
Yeah.
But when I encounter musicians of Stathis Karapanos' level and the level of the Royal Philharmonic, although I may say, let's do this or let's do that, but I let the musicians come to me rather than me impose something. And that is a total joy because Stathis did things in my flute concerto that I had not imagined. The way he would bend the tones, where he would add a little more vibrato and then more vibrato, or go the opposite direction. The things he did with tempi, with quavers versus what I had written, which I thought of the quavers should be a little more regular. He would speed up in little ways and then he'd come back. This rubato he would do. But you know what? I let him do it. Why? Because it's so musical. I don't tell you how to breathe.
No.
It's not my right. I don't tell myself how to breathe. I hope I breathe. I mean, it's a pity this guy's not breathing anymore.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
such a long time ago that he passed, 1791. You know,
Yeah.
and you know, I adore the sound of the voice. So when I wrote a concerto, I thought of the flute as a voice and a singing voice, and that's the way Stathis plays. Now, the great thing about an orchestra with these London players like the Royal Philharmonic, with whom I've now become friends, we just breathe together. And they did little things in the accompaniment of Stathis in that flute concerto.
Yeah.
I just let them go. You know, when the bassoon goes,
Oh, that bassoon moment was incredible.
well, you're a woodwind player, you know, and these I had all the principal players, you
Yeah.
know, in that room. They all came, you know, and they do these little things. The oboist, the clarinetist, the other flutist, the trumpet, the horn, the French horn, you know, and then the strings. You know, we had a guest concertmaster leader, but Andrew was leading the seconds, and then we had the wonderful violas and the cello with Jonathan and the double bass. These are all principals. These are the most magnificent players. And then everybody else, you know, are major players in the Royal Philharmonic. So if I breathe with them and we have a community of love and giving, they give back and they breathe with me. And it's just so we could lay down the three movements of the concerto in one session. And they had really not seen the music before, unless they had it electronically, you know. But they
Mm.
didn't have the parts until they walked in. But they're such primo players that they can sight read and jump right into the story of the piece. Now, it's a little different when you do songs because there is text. Oh, cool is the valley now, and there, love, shall we go. For many a choir is singing now, where love did sometime go. I mean, James Joyce.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just it's very
Yeah.
so they'll have the story sung by this immaculate, exquisite voice coming from Mia Persson. They'll have the whole concept presented to them as they're playing. But for example, the first song that we're doing is from a portrait of the artist as a young man. Ding dong, the castle bell. Farewell, my mother. Bury me in the old churchyard beside my oldest brother.
Yeah.
So the strings initially, the violins, first and seconds, are going do la do la do la do la do la. So all equal sound. They come in at different entrances. The principal first, principal second are doing a harmonic, so you have a continual wash of sound. But then underneath, the rest of the violins are going do la si a do la slower than that. So how do you what do you do as a creative artist, performing artist? How do you create dee da, dee da, dee da, and it's got to be equal. And then the French horn comes in on the F sharp. Dee da, you know, the sound of the bell. Dee.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Then we have Susie, who's magnificent on the harp, going G sharp, D sharp, lower notes. So I've been thinking about this. How am I going to do this in the time allotted to me in a 3 hour session with a break to get them to go, dee da, dee da. You know, this kind of sticky tone, these tenuto tones, tenuti, you know.
Yeah.
So you think of how does it get bowed? If they go down, even as great as these players are, you can hear a slight kick, kick, kick. And it's a touch which is similar to what is in the Sibelius Second Symphony. Da 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 dee da 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 da. So how do you get that? You get it with a bow action called Loure, Loure accent aigu. So it's literally the bow is going like this, kind of sideways, almost sticking to the
Wow.
string. These are the things you have to think about. And when you deal with high quality players like these,
Yeah.
they'll all do Loure absolutely perfectly. And I will say to them before we start, Loure on the do la, very slow, and the tempo is da da dee da dee da dee da dee da. Now, each of those notes have to be perfectly eguale, equal.
Yeah.
But you have to
That
think of these things before you walk into the theater or
right.
into the
So
rehearsal room.
you've got to have in your head what you want it to sound like, and then you've got to verbalize that so that they will understand. And but because they're such amazing musicians, they will, as soon as you say it, they'll get it.
You know what's great about great players and great singers? If you tell them what you believe to be your path, they'll come with you down the
Yeah.
path.
Yeah.
And you know what they say often with, especially orchestral musicians, they say, just show us or tell us what you want, and we'll do it.
Yeah.
It's the instrumentalists or the soloists or the conductors who don't emote that in word, eye, motion,
Mm.
that then presents an issue of communication. But I've done this for such a long time that I think about these things. So before I go in, I'll have a plan of action, which I'll relate to them mostly through motion, but sometimes words. I don't like talking too much. As you remember, I just work.
Yeah.
There's a problem, we stop, we start again. I don't like talking, it wastes too much time. And I don't like producers stopping me and saying, "Oh, we'll get back to you in 5 minutes," you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
which
Yeah. Yeah.
which can present difficulty because the orchestras love conductors who don't talk too much. Claudio Botto never talked. Carrion talked a little too much. Celibidache was ridiculous. That's all he did was talk. I don't believe in it. I believe in working with them and emoting. The hand and the eye have to relate what you want. So, as the composer of these pieces,
Yeah.
I have a
Yeah, you got it.
definition. I'm trying to get it across. I know with these amazing people, it's going to be a joy.
Yeah, yeah, you really have got the cream of the cream. We talk about, why do filmmakers, composers, why do people come to London? And they come to London because there's such creativity here. It's
We have
amazing.
it in New York. We have it in New York as well, and in Chicago and Philadelphia and LA and San Francisco and other cities like Buffalo and Louisville. The problem is we have the issue of cost. And in the States, the cost, because I think of unionization, has gotten very, very difficult. So for a lot of us, I mean, this is the third British orchestra I've recorded with.
Mm,
I recorded with the CBSO, the City of Birmingham, and with the BBC
yeah,
in Cardiff. And now this will be my third recording with the RPO. And it's just easier. I mean, I have some friends who go to the Czech Republic, to Prague, and so forth, but and some to Germany. But I find that working now with the RPO is for me a complete dream,
yeah.
every which
So
way.
absolutely. So when I saw you last, you were finishing The Slave. And tell me a bit more about that. Tell me a bit more about, because it's based on the book, isn't it?
It's based on the book by Isaac Bashevis Singer, who won the Nobel Prize in 1978 for his literature. He
Yeah.
is one of the greatest authors of the 20th century. And when I was 20 years old, I read The Slave, and I said, this has to be an opera. In 1971, how do you send a letter to Isaac Bashevis Singer, who was pretty famous in those days? He had just sold the Yentl stories to Barbara Streisand. So how did I get to him? I looked in the phone book. That's where he was.
Really?
Those were the days.
Yeah.
I have a similar story with Boris Karloff when I was 10, but that's a whole nother story. But here we go. So I picked, I saw there his address, his phone number. So I wrote a letter to him that I'd love to, I'm a composer. I'd like to have the rights to the slave to make it into an opera. He wrote me back. Dear Mr. Shapiro, I don't know anything about opera. You may even be a famous man. Would you please speak to Lila, who's my agent at Farrar Straus Giroux, the publishing house? She'll help.
Right.
So I contacted her. She was lovely. And she says, I'm so sorry, but Paramount Pictures bought the rights.
Ah.
So during the pandemic, I reached out to the estate, to the trustees through their publishing agent, a woman in New York, and she said, sure, you can have the rights. Here's what our fees are and blah, blah, blah. So it had gone through years of lapsed rights with Paramount and other people who'd bought the rights. And I got the rights. I have a contract. So I got the rights. And if we make any money from this thing, it's split three ways: Hannah McDermott, me, and the estate of Isaac Bashevis Singer. So the story is very interesting because it's very relevant to now. It takes place in 1648 Poland, in which there is a massacre led by the Cossacks who come out of the steppes of Russia to kill the Jews of southern Poland and also nobility for what they thought was anti-Russian activity, which is nonsense. It's known as the Chmielnitsky massacres, and it's a kind of an early Holocaust. 100,000 Jews were slaughtered. It's from the exact area that my grandmother is from, the
Wow.
exact area, and the exact area that Isaac Bashevis Singer's from for the story. So Jacob, our hero, who's a scholarly man with a wife and two young kids, is manacled and sold into slavery, and he's not sure what happens to his wife and his kids. He's sold into slavery, and he's put up on a mountainside of a Polish tavern keeper, who turns out to be a very good guy, not surrounded by some good people. However, the tavern keeper, Jan Bezik's daughter, Wanda, goes up to the mountainside to visit this studious man who's now a slave, taking care of a cow and scything wheat, who after 4 years becomes kind of a macho man. He's as strong as could be. She falls in love with him. She is, Wanda, a Roman Catholic widow. It's 1652 Poland, folks.
Yeah.
So what happens? It's the whole story that Singer portrays in this epic novel. The first half is the Polish village where she lives and where he is the slave. How he leaves the Polish village and what happens to her. How he comes back to rescue her and how they flee for their lives because a Christian married to a Jew or having any relationship is death for everybody.
Yeah.
They get to a reconstructed Jewish village that's coming out of the whole disastrous massacre, what we call a pogrom, that's being rebuilt. And they go in there, but she has to act as a mute. I have a mute soprano in an opera, right? There's plenty of opportunity. This is in 1652. And she's acting as Sarah, the wife of Jacob. He becomes the head of the village because of the existing head is kind of like my grandfather, a real creep. I can say that. And the lord of the manor and the lady of the manor take him in, and they find him fascinating because he's so smart. And they compare the liturgy of the Catholic Church with the liturgy and why you've waited all these years, you've seen your children destroyed. How can you keep on going? And he says, basically, this is what I was taught. And she's trying to learn the Jewish version to compare it with her Catholic background. So what's the image of all of this? And she dies in childbirth. Before she dies in childbirth, she sings the song "Let Me Live," which Mia is recording with me.
Right.
So, and then there's an epilogue when they get back together again, kind of like Wuthering Heights. So, but what is he doing here? And why is it relevant? It's relevant because my story, how I was born from parents who had one version of whatever, cannot overwhelm or be dictatorial to other people whose stories may be different. And they can't do the same to me. It is so relevant for now. And it's relevant for thousands of years. I just don't understand it. I
Yeah.
can't understand it. You and I are dear friends. We will always be dear friends. We never say, well, Hillary's story is better than Michael's story, therefore there must be opposition in us. No,
Right. No, absolutely.
it's all going to decay and fall off, and we'll be skeletons if
Yeah.
we're lucky. Then
Yeah.
what are we talking about? And
Yeah.
there are many people who are atheists, don't believe in any of these traditions, or people that, I have family that doesn't, and I have other family more observant. I don't care.
Mm.
I go into the Church of England. I go into Roman Catholic churches.
Yeah.
I feel very much at home. My friend is a music director at the Gloucester Cathedral, which I love.
Yeah.
I'm not Anglican, but I have total respect for it and love for it. I go, evensong to me is a revelation.
Yeah.
Revelation. I said
Revelation.
revelation. All I'm trying to, because they're doing Bird and they're doing the Elizabethan composers, and I just sit there.
Yeah.
My point is, and it's Singer's point, that the love between two people is more important and more binding and crucial to civilization than anything else. So the great operas, and I'm going to talk to you about the difficulty of opera, but the great operas, like this guy's operas,
Yeah.
are all about those kinds of things. In The Marriage of Figaro, obviously it's castes, you know, the royals versus the servants and so forth, what Beaumarchais did and which he picked up with Da Ponte. But here's the thing about opera, which I find fascinating. There are only a handful of composers and librettists in the history of opera that can do it.
Yeah.
And why? Number one, the libretto must be very strong, and it must have a raison d'être, a reason to be. A composer like Schubert and a composer like Schumann, great song composers who could create in their Winterreise or Dichterliebe worlds, could not write opera. If you look at the Songspiels, he wrote 10 of them or something, Schubert, they don't work.
Mm.
But this guy, who wasn't much of a song composer, but he was an amazing opera composer. Why? Here it is. When we first met, Hillary, when I was on your show the first time, our music was formal. Your music inside of you and
Yeah.
music inside of me. Now, when I see you, I can't stop hugging and kissing because
Yeah.
we love you so much. And, we love your family. We love everything about you and what you've done and what
Thank
you do and for you as a human being. So what is my music now with Hillary and your music with me?
you. Yeah. It's completely different.
Completely different. So here we go. So we have Wanda, Sarah, and Jacob moving through this 1652 horror show on both sides where everyone is crazy, but on both sides, sometimes there are some people that are wonderful and they're trying to do better. So how do we move people across the stage? And here's the rub. There are very few composers in opera history who've understood how to write for the stage. Songs, which I've written dozens of them, are self-composed squares. They're insular. And in the poetry of Ding Dong the Castle Bell, Joyce is portraying something. But when he's portraying in The Marriage of Figaro a scene, when the two women are writing a letter. How does he do it? He's thinking of how he's moving them across the action with music that portrays in a subtle, subtle way what's going on in the drama. In Aida, it's so clear. Also, incredible canvas, right?
Yeah.
On Carlos, Wozzeck in Billy Budd of Ben Britton. I mean, these
Oh,
guys
yeah.
guys knew how to do it, but not all composers can do it. Our great Beethoven, who wrote amazing stuff in Fidelio, had a very weak libretto. It
Mm.
doesn't really work. But there's scenes like when Florestan is in the dark, or when the prisoners chorus comes out, that are really first-rate stuff. But he wasn't Mozart. He
No.
was Così fan tutte, which is just, champagne and caviar, or Don Giovanni, which is just incredible, right?
Yeah.
There's always the story of Wagner, which I won't get into. It could take us 10 different stories,
Yeah.
10 hours to discuss because Wagnerian opera is problematic. But in the great composers, Mozart, Verdi, you know, it's just something about it. So you learn from that. And I'm hoping that The Slave has the same impact, especially with this story that Hannah has taken from Isaac Singer, which is just a revelation. And it does come from my part of Europe. My grandmother is from the exact town where Isaac Bashevis' grandfather was the town rabbi, and his mother, Isaac Singer's mother, was born.
Wow.
One of my cousins went to school with Isaac Singer's older brother. I mean,
That's insane.
it's
That's
insane. Now we're in America since 1906, so it's been a long time here. But my family was in that part of Poland for at least 1,000 years.
yeah.
So after I'm with you in DC, listen to me, in London, we're flying to Warsaw for to be with Sir David Pountney and his new production of Penderecki's The Black Mask at the Polish National Opera. So I should be very interested to go back and see some of this and be with Sir
Yeah.
David's production. I'm really looking forward to it. But
Yeah.
this is the life, and I very much want to see the slave on the stage. Uh,
Yeah, absolutely.
you'll know, I'll tell you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you remember, I flew to Milan to see the Frankenstein,
Sure
which
did.
was very special. It was just amazing to see that, and I want to see it again, obviously.
Well, we're
Um,
hoping that it'll be done. It's being done 6 different places this coming October here in the States. I have a new agent in Berlin, so we're hoping to get it back on the continent. And I have three very prominent performances in the next few years, which I'll let you know about here in the States with major orchestras, which I'll be conducting. So, it's work, 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 work.
Absolutely, it's fantastic, and I'm particularly excited to see the Slave performed because since we met originally online, like this, that's been part of our conversation. You've mentioned that you were doing it, or you were going to start it, or Hannah was doing the libretto and that sort of thing. So I feel like I've lived that journey with
You
you.
have.
So to see it performed and hear it, and I am so excited to hear even one song of it in
Mm.
November. Just be amazing.
You know what I want at the end? And I'm a very political type in the sense of many of my pieces have a reason. And the reason is much like this guy and Verdi. And Puccini. I very much want my music to have a purpose. I mean Ben Britton too. There is a reason under the sun to do what we do. My next piece, which will be a cello concerto written for a very prominent cellist to be announced in a
Oh,
prominent orchestra, is called The World to Come.
wow.
Wow. And it's all about where do we go from here, at least in some traditions? And I'm going to put together all the traditions in one piece to be played by a cellist in a great orchestra. So that's my next concerto. And I do want to write another opera very soon after this. But again, with you're faced with the issue of also getting it done.
Yeah.
When you do an orchestral work, and I'm a performer, I'm a conductor, I can do it myself. I don't have to wait
No.
for anyone else to figure out how does it, work into a season or a program or this or that. And I do believe that we have now a new kind of delivery system. It used to be that concerts, when I was a kid, you sneak into Carnegie Hall through Carnegie Recital Hall and you go see Stokowski conduct, which I did 6 times. It was a way of sneaking in, which we did for free. So, but Stokowski, Karajan, Bernstein, Rubinstein, Horowitz, Milstein. I heard all of these people. Anserme, I heard all of them when I was a kid because they all came through New York, like they would have come through London.
Mm.
You would have had the opportunity to hear these people. And it was really a great thing. But that was I mean, they did record, but they recorded mostly for posterity. Some recorded more than others. But now we have something called the iPhone
Yeah.
or, some other version of the phone where people are downloading. They're not necessarily going to concerts anymore. In the States, unlike the Royal Albert Hall, which you and I went with our spouses to hear the
Yeah.
Verdi Requiem, full
Yeah.
house, that crazy, beautiful place.
Yeah.
I don't think you could fill an auditorium of 5,000 seats here in the United States very easily. People don't go to the events and they're having a problem. So, what is not a problem are alternate delivery systems. So, if I didn't record my music, and I'm working, as you know, very eagerly every year to put out at least two major, what we used to call CDs, but recordings, which are
Yeah.
downloadable on YouTube and Spotify, Apple Music, Prime Music, Deezer. I have all of these sites they go to internationally. I'm on 51 playlists. I've had 400,000 streams in the past year. Could I say I've had 400,000 people sitting in concert halls listening to my music? No.
No.
So when you were there for the flute concerto, it's now been
Yeah.
it's been heard by 20,000 people already.
Wow.
I mean, could I have this happen? So you see, delivery systems is the way we have to think. Now, theater is a different thing. When The Slave is done, I will fully have it videoed so that people can see the movie, The Slave.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So what we have to think about in our state right now, composers, how do you get the word out? What's the delivery system? And when I go and play billiards with this guy in the world to come, how's it going to remain? If or will it remain? So I think of my teachers. I think of Ellie Siegmeister and Vincent Persichetti. I think of David Diamond and William Schumann and Lenny and Copeland. I mean, people I knew, Peter
Yeah.
Menon. Many of them, the music is not being done except in certain circumstances. Some of them made the error, Copeland not, but some of them made the error of not recording. So there's no vision of what they did.
Mm.
And it's a damn pity. Um, some people, Gerard Schwartz here is a terrific person of resurrecting a lot of this music, and he's done it for many years, but he's alone. There aren't that many that have done it. So I'm lucky in the sense that I'm a school conductor and pianist, and I have a lifetime of conducting this standard rep. Beethoven
Mm.
symphonies, Mozart symphonies, Brahms symphony, Dvorak, requiems, opera. I've done
Yeah.
a lot. So when I get in front of the Royal Philharmonic, an orchestra of this incredible talent, or the CBSO or the whatever, BBC, and the orchestra's here. I know what to do, but I only know what to do because I've had decades of experience doing this guy and the others.
Yeah.
So, but now in my life, I tend to focus mostly, unless I'm doing, music for friends, I'm doing mostly my own things just to get them down, to show people, what is this? How do we phrase this symphony? How do we phrase this concerto or this opera?
Yeah. Yeah.
But, not always. I have good friends who do my stuff too, which is always, wonderful experience. So,
Yeah.
so
What I think would be interesting, I look forward to hearing another flautist doing your flute concerto.
too.
Um, I don't know who could do it the way that Stathis did it, but there'll be somebody who can do it differently, do it their way.
This is always the hope. All of my music is now um, published.
Yeah, with Universal.
Universal Edition Wien, which is Universal Edition Vienna, which
Yeah.
is the publisher of Gustav Mahler, Richard Strauss, Schoenberg, Berg, Webern, and a lot
Oh,
of other people, Kurt Weill, Boulez, Stockhausen, but many, many people. And now me, and it's going to be there. So
yeah.
they're the most wonderful people imaginable. They produce the most beautiful scores, as you've seen when we did the flute concerto.
Yeah.
But yes, I would love it to be played by others. Right now, it's Stathis's piece. I wrote it for him, and he will be doing it elsewhere with maybe me not conducting, which would be a gem of a thing to happen. He very much wants to do it because he hasn't had this experience, I don't think, very much of having a composer
No,
write a piece for him.
no, absolutely. And I think very much, when I spoke to him, when I interviewed him, he was very much kind of proud of this remarkable piece. I mean, it's just beautiful. It really is.
It's catered for him, but he did his own things with it. And when I say it's my Schubert Mozart piece, it's just jam-packed with melodic line.
It is. It is. Yeah.
I'd like to talk about melody for a second.
Okay.
My first teacher, Siegmeister, Ellie Siegmeister, was a student at Boulanger and gave me 5 years of Boulanger training. Said that I was a natural melodist, which I, to this day, think is the greatest compliment. Because the best composers in history have been great melodists, all through history, to this day.
Yeah.
And look, rhythmic, harmonic, timbre, choice of instruments, line, counterpoint, fugue, canon, all the things we learn, they're all important. But the average listener hangs on to great melodic line. And I'm not talking about Rachmaninoff great melodic line because that's his melodic line. Dee da 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 dee da da da. Magnificent, right? And
Hmm.
why are the Rachmaninoff concerti still filling halls? Not only the virtuosic, wonderful things in the way he could orchestrate and blend, but it comes directly from who this man was. So my melodic line comes directly from what I am. It's my melodic line. It's not Rachmaninoff, it's not Mozart, it's not Wagner, it's not Puccini. It's my melodic line, but it's melody. Some people say, why are the Verdi operas still so popular? There's a reason. They've got great tunes.
Mm.
This guy was an incredible melody writer, total natural, and he could knock it out so fast. But his melody, especially in the operas, was all catered to the character that is in the Da Ponte drama. And it varies, you know? Don Giovanni has a different melody in him than Leporello does. You got to think of these things. So
Yeah.
Jacob sings a certain way. Hillary speaks a certain way. I
Yeah.
speak a certain way. You breathe differently than I breathe, but we're both humans. We breathe.
Yeah.
Why do you teach? Why do you have the Harmonious World? And the whole title of Harmonious World is to me magnificent because isn't that what we want?
Yeah. That's That's all there is, really, isn't it? I mean, every time I talk to musicians all around the world, that's what they're saying. That's what we're all striving for. Not everybody, clearly, but
I think we have to stand up and overwhelm the darkness.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
And we overwhelm it with the love that you and I certainly have for each other and for what we do, and the love for the creation of music and being creative. Creativity is purely the best thing we can do, and not destroy the beauty of life. So when I sit and listen to Adrian doing Evensong in the Gloucester Cathedral, I'm ecstatic. It's not my tradition. Well, why not?
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
see?
absolutely.
So this is when I walk into a rehearsal room or to a room in front of musicians and I'm doing my things and trying to get them to understand what I needed to impart. The higher talent that they have, the quicker they get to the vision. It's like the way you interview. You have a great talent in doing it, so you can get to the vision. And that's what we try to do together. Get to the vision so we impart this sense of beauty and caring.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
yeah,
Absolutely. Wow. Thank you so much. Honestly, as usual, it's been an absolute joy to talk to you.
wonderful to talk to you always.
It really is. And I can't wait to see you in a month's time in Abbey Road again.
It's going to be great. And with that wonderful group of players and
Yeah.
all of our family members and other people being there, it's great being there together in this harmonious world. Hillary, thank you.
I don't really want to speak over this beautiful flute and this beautiful music. This is the third movement of Michael Shapiro's In the Light of the Sun Concerto for Flute and Orchestra that was recorded in April 2024 at Abbey Road Institute in Islington. I hope you enjoyed listening into my conversation with Michael and enjoy some more of this third movement. But if you get a chance, please do listen to the whole concerto. It's absolutely gorgeous. And take a listen back to my interview with Stathis Karapanos a few episodes ago. All the links are in the show notes. And oh, by the way, when Michael, several times in that conversation, talks about this guy, it's because behind his head in the studio is a picture of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, who he constantly refers back to. This guy died in 1791 and still has such an influence on all of us. Well, thank you for joining me once more, and I hope you have a very, very harmonious world. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook, and it's a great delight to bring this series of discussions with musicians and composers and writers and all sorts of people to you. Obviously, there's no point in having a podcast if people aren't listening, and I'm very grateful to my listeners for doing so. Thanks also to Joe English for composing and performing this new theme tune. So wherever you get your podcast, you can leave a review. You can share this with your friends and family, either as a link or on social media and that sort of thing. I'd be really grateful for that. Don't forget that you can subscribe now. There's a link wherever you get your podcasts. So have a great week, and please remember why I started this, which is just to try and make the world a little more harmonious. Thanks for listening to Harmonious World.